Hello, listeners. So, this is the second podcast that we're releasing this week after yesterday's Netherlands national team chat. So, this pod is all about the Eredivisie, all about the Dutch top flight. Hope you enjoy it. Don't forget also to give us a like on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes. You can download us on SoundCloud and iTunes. Subscribe to us if you're new. And keep the comments coming as well. We love your feedback. We're really happy that you're enjoying our podcasts. But keep it coming. Let us know what's good, maybe what needs to improve. Also comments on the Eredivisie and the national team. We'd love to hear from you.
It's a very interesting derby. Always one that appears to be played very early. It's 12 Dutch time. And Vitesse are playing at home. They're in a good vein of form. Nijmegen are struggling. I must admit, in the head-to-heads, Nijmegen have won more. So that could also play a role. But I think with Vitesse being at home, I think they'll win. But it's from obviously Arnhem and Nijmegen, there is a rivalry which isn't really friendly. They don't really like each other too much. And it's always an interesting watch, the game, whether it's played at Nijmegen or in Arnhem. It's always an interesting watch. But my prediction will be that Vitesse will win 2-1.
You think it'll be that close? Because personally, I can see a bit of a walkover from Vitesse. I know the game's always close. It's going to be a derby. But I'm not so sure on this occasion, only because NEC are coming to the end of the season. It hasn't gone well for them. They've lost 7 of the last 10. Whereas Vitesse, they're only going up. Like, they've had a tough start to the season, but it's only got better. And it's coming to a point now, leading into the cup final as well, where they're going to come in with some form. I also can see, I mean, NEC have got tons of foreigners, and I think that will have an effect on the derby, because Vitesse will have Goran Kasia, Van Volswinkel, Butner, lots of players in the squad that know what it's like to play these games. They know what it means. I spoke to an NEC fan actually, not too long ago, and it's like they bite each other's heads off. It's a really bitter rivalry. I think the passion will be seen in the Vitesse players more than NEC.
Yeah, I think it's a must-win for both sides, because Vitesse really need to win to put some pressure on Utrecht in fourth. And they've got 4 losses in the last 6, and they're also lucky that Heerenveen have also gone on a poor run of form just below them. So they really need to win to really look to get high in the Eredivisie, and Nijmegen need to win to really start to put some distance between themselves and Roda in 16th. But I think just because of that aspect, both teams need to win. It's going to be quite close, and I think there's been times that NEC have set up well for the bigger games, and I think it's probably going to be one of those games where they set up better than usual, where they try to counterattack and Vitesse give them the space. But I think Vitesse will edge it just because of the quality of their players. And Van Volswinkel's been one of the most sort of underrated signings of this season, because I think, how long has it been since Vitesse had an experienced striker that's going to stay for more than a season? And you can see how that's affected Rashika, because last season he was one of the top scorers, and now this season, where there isn't such a high reliance on him to be a scorer, he's more of an assistant provider now and more of a natural winger. And I think it's gonna be a good match to watch, especially with two managers who really need to win the game.
To go back on Michael's point as well about NEC having a lot of foreign players, I think the supporters will demand that the foreign players playing for Nijmegen understand what this game means. I don't think it will completely go over their heads. I think the supporters will be in a determined mood to let them know that this this game should mean as much to the players as it does to the fans. And I just think it'll be a very interesting game. And I can just see Vitesse edging it purely because it is a derby. I can't see it being a 4-1 or 3-0, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think it's a game that a lot of people should certainly tune into because there's a lot of young talent on show in that game. You've got players like Rashika, Lewis Baker, Kevin Dykes. On NEC side, you've got Mohamed Raihi, who left PSV last season. J. Roy Grot, who's scored 5 goals in the Eredivisie this season, and he's 19. Very strong player, very mobile, can play in any of the front 3 positions. And you've also got Kevin Mai and Freddie Kadioglu. And I think it's you've got a lot of talented young players, and you've got 2 coaches who are sort of trying to move up on the hierarchy. And it's going to be a match to watch, and there's a lot of talent on the show. But I think Vitesse edge it just because they have more quality, and they need that win more, not to slip out of the playoff places, just in case they don't win the cup final, and just to put some pressure on AZ and Utrecht as it's been so they can actually make a proper run for the Europa League automatic places.
Just to make one final point on the Gelderse derby, be interesting to see about Navarone 4, who played for 5 seasons at NEC Nijmegen and transferred to Vitesse at the start of this season. So obviously he's returning. He's playing against the team that he used to play for. So it'll be interesting how well he's received from the Nijmegen supporters, making such a controversial move.
Yeah, that's quite a controversial move for him to do that. And I think he got some backlash from the fans in the last match when NEC got a last-minute draw with Vitesse, which would actually suggest to me as well that this could be a tighter match than I originally thought. I think I still predict 3-0 Vitesse myself. I do think the quality will tell. But I think, again, with NEC, I'm looking at their away form in Eredivisie, and they have won 2, drawn 3, and lost all the rest of their away games this season, and against bigger teams as well. 4-0 away to Feyenoord, 3-1 away to PSV, 2-0 at AZ, 5-0 at Ajax. I just wonder if there'd be overrun here, maybe a little bit. But we'll see what Vitesse can bring as well. Because Vitesse have been on and off this season. They struggle to really put teams away. And that was what their problem was early in the season, last season, where they couldn't win games by a bigger margin or get those goals, and then end up conceding late goals, late equalisers, late winners to lose the game. And they are showing a better strength now at this point of the season. But have they got the quality to come 4th place as well as a cup final? That would be an extremely good season, don't you think?
Yeah, I think I can't see them coming 4th, but I can definitely see them winning the cup final. And I think should they win kind of the Bay Cup for the first time in their history, I think it will be a fantastic achievement for the club.
I think it will be a good season if they come 4th and win the cup final. I think 4th is it can go to anyone right now because Utrecht, Alkmaar, they haven't really managed to pull away with Heerenveen and Vitesse as that form has dropped, and FC Twente are also one of the surprise packages of the season, and they're also in the running in 6th place. So and especially in this game, both managers need to win because 4 losses in the last 6 for Vitesse, 5 losses in the last 6 for NEC, and they're both fighting a European battles and a relegation battle. And I think Hibala, he sort of can set his team up better for not exactly the creme de la creme of the Eredivisie like Feyenoord, Ajax, and PSV, but sort of the lower teams. There he can set his team up and really sort of have a go, and he's got those players to use, and you can see him sort of going with the back five, and to really try and frustrate Vitesse. And I think it's gonna. I'm predicting a 3-1, but both teams score and Vitesse win by a very slender lead.
Another big game this weekend is between Roda Den Haag and Roda JC. Either of those teams, the win, could start to make the distance between themselves and NEC. What do you think there?
I think there'll be a winner. I can't see that game being a draw. And considering Roda JC at home, it's always difficult for most clubs to go to Kerkrade. I'm edging towards Roda JC purely because they're at home. I think they might sneak a win, and then their chances to avoid the relegation playoffs would have been enhanced an awful lot. But I think Roda Den Haag, they're not completely out of the picture. I don't think they're goners just yet. But I think in the case of Roda Den Haag, their home form is going to be vital. They need to start winning more at home.
Yeah, I think Roda have improved ever since after the winter break, and one of the best performers is sort of Mitchell Paulison, who was very highly rated as a young winger and who has managed ever since so the back end of January has managed 3 goals and 2 assists in a run of games, and he's now the top scorer, and he's near the top assister. And I think players like that have started to improve and come through for Roda, and it's a scrap at the bottom, so it's another match where both teams have to go for a win. Although it's been a very, very underwhelming season for them, especially with the players that they have and the players that they have coming through the academy. It's everything there has just gone horribly wrong from top to bottom with the ownership, and they couldn't facilitate a proper coaching change. We just talked about Vitesse. Henk Fraser, his team is now in the cup final, and now in the top 7, and he managed to stay up quite comfortably with that Ado team. So that's maybe another feather in his cap. But everything has just crumbled for Ado, and you expect them to be better because they're established Eredivisie team. But they really need to sort themselves out, especially with their Ken VB stepping to help them with that ownership thing.
I think the ownership question of Roda Den Haag has affected them. I think it dragged on for far too long with everybody asking for clarity in terms of Wang and what his intentions were. Chaka just mentioned Henk Fraser. He actually left Roda Den Haag to go to Vitesse. And if you look what a sterling job he's doing there, I think if Ardo would have had a little bit more insight and a little bit more forward thinking, they could well find themselves in a better position. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with Alphonse Groenendijk and whether or not they do stay up, because then should they not, for example, then you're maybe looking at another change of manager for Ardo. If they do they continue with Groenendijk? Do they look to see who else may be interested in trying to get the club to move forward?
I've been watching Ardo a fair bit in the home games recently, and they almost look frightened to shoot. They don't create enough opportunities, and they do look to get things from set pieces. And I don't know, the home range could be a big difference to them, but it depends what Roda turn up. They're very, very defensive. and I just wonder if I'll try and sneak a draw again, as I've done on several other occasions this season.
I just wanted to add I mistakenly said that the game would be played in Kerkrade. I'm thinking Roda JC were actually at home when it's actually Roda Den Haag at home. So
I did wonder that, guys. I had to double check it. I was like, oh, is that right?
Maybe I got a little bit too ahead of myself, so I apologise for that.
No.
But I still don't think, even though the game will now be played in The Hague, I still don't think it will be a draw, but Ardo must make home advantage count in this instance.
Yeah, I think the loss of Castanier, who was still their top scorer and was very young, very talented player, was also huge for them. And there's been some really weird decisions, like loaning out Dennis van der Heijden after he came on at the back end of last season. And you talk about a young striker that scored 2 goals on his debut and scored a few other goals at the back end of last season to loan out to the Eredivisie, instead of sort of allowing him to get game time there. And it's not like they had a world-class striker in his place to really keep him out of the side. He could have got into the side. And, you think maybe spending sort of a season in the Eredivisie, having a sort of coaching change to and having a chance to bring through some of the youngsters and make a squad of the young talent there will sort of be conducive for them going forward.
Yeah, I agree with your point about Van der Heijden, because Mike Havenaar last season looked like he was the striker that none of the other players could displace, and it felt like Van der Heijden, maybe that's why he was loaned out as well, because he wanted first team football and felt that Havenaar was a big threat to his place. But what's Havenaar been doing this season? It's been very, as you said, underwhelming. He's been poor and hasn't contributed enough. He should, in my opinion, should be comfortably pushing double figures, and with his goals, they could have been further at the table as well. It's a shame that Van der Heijden has been loaned out.
Yeah, I think Dennis van der Heijden should have been told you're only 20 years old. I think you can learn more here with Mike Havenaar than you learn more out on loan. And it's a shame because they do have talented players. They do have, I think Danny Bakker is a proper defensive midfielder. He's tigerish in the tackle. He's not too he's sort of the old-fashioned defensive midfielder in sort of the English nations, and he's different to all of his peers in that. And I think he should have also been given a chance to sort of develop in the Eredivisie, and although he's been one of the main players, it's been unlucky for him because he's been involved in a faulty team with a faulty structure and faulty ownership.
And you've got Tommy Berkelsdijk as well at centre-back, who's a very, very good player. Last season, he had a very solid season and was linked with Leeds United. They went on to sign Pontus Jansson in the end, who's become probably the English Championship defender of the season. But yeah, he's had a very dodgy season, up and down, making mistakes. But then he's also a leader. When they have had a clean sheet, it's because Berkelsdijk has been key in that match.
Yeah, and he's also sort of a good humoured captain. The players really seem to react off him and respect him, but he's also willing to have a laugh with them. And if they do get relegated, he's probably gonna go. There's teams in the mid to low table who would definitely take him and definitely can use him. So I think he's worked hard this season, and he's still a very good player. And at only 26, there's still a lot he can do there.
To elaborate on Tom Beugelsdijk, I think the interest from Leeds was surprising, especially for himself. When he was questioned on it by the Dutch media, he basically not shied away from it, but said that the interest from Leeds United didn't appear to be concrete enough. And considering how well respected he is by the Ardo supporters, he's slowly but surely becoming a cult hero at the club. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens to him if they do go down. And I think from the striker's point of view with Ardo, with Duplan and Ruben Schaken, they could have also produced a little bit more. Duplan, when he was at Utrecht, was so dangerous on a regular basis. And maybe he felt he needed a change of scenery and chose Ardo Den Haag and Ruben Schaken as well. When he was at Feyenoord, he played over 100 games for Feyenoord, and so I think from the striker's point of view, those two strikers could have got involved a little bit more, scored a few more goals to push Ardo a little bit higher up the league than where they currently are.
Yeah, just a final point on Duplan. When he joined Ardo, he said he wanted to leave at Utrecht for Ardo for a new challenge, and because of the club's ambition, where's that gone? It's all gone wrong at Ardo, I think, in the club structure, and it's a shame that players like him have probably been left a bit disappointed actually at the end of his career, not being able to have one last real good challenge.
Well, I think in the case of when he left Utrecht, there were wrangling contract negotiations, and I think he was growing a little bit tired of that and also wanting a move. I will be interviewing him in April, so I look forward to asking him a few questions to get a little bit of a clearer picture. But also he's played in the French second division. He's a good footballer, a very interesting footballer. So it'll be interesting to see if we can find out more in that respect.
Sticking with the relegation battle, Twente Go Ahead Eagles. You've got Twente, who are in the top 8 of the league, looking good, pretty solid, not giving too much away, but maybe not also setting the world alight. But not forgetting they can't play European football next season, so there maybe is a bit of an issue there. Maybe there's not much to play for against Go Ahead Eagles, and the Eagles will be looking for a massive win.
Yeah, Twente have done well this season with the Loanees, and as you know, being the one from Manchester City with 13 goals this season, and Go Ahead have sort of made those essential loans too late. They made them in January, and that was way too late to start gelling a team for a relegation battle. And now they've also sacked their manager. And interestingly, in the Dutch media this week, they were talking about Pep Linders from Liverpool, who was working with Klopp as a future manager there. But I think he's sort of someone that's highly respected. He could stay at Liverpool, probably get an Eredivisie job at a much better club. And I see Go Ahead really giving Twente a battle. They've still got a lot of talented young players. Chirivella and Dan Crowley have sort of come in and done well. And so has Manu from Brighton and Hove Albion. So I think those players are really good players, and sort of Sander Duits at the base of midfield, in the midfield three with Chirivella and Crowley. He's very strong, very authoritative, playing with two young midfielders. And I think they'll really give Twente a battle, because Twente have got sort of one of the most talented players, Kamohelo Bokocho. He's just coming back from South Africa, and he's just had a very stressful international break. He actually applied and got Dutch citizenship, but that prevented him from playing for South Africa, because you have to forego your other citizenship when you get Dutch citizenship, and so he had to reapply for South African citizenship, and he got it. So he's just come back from all that in his international break. So I think and a long journey from South Africa to the Netherlands. So I think there's a chance that they could not be at the races on that particular day.
I think it's very interesting from a manager's point of view that Go Ahead have appointed Robert Maaskant. He himself stated that he's invested a lot of time in the business world and is only prepared to be manager of Go Ahead to the end of the season for the remaining 7 games, and then that will be that for him, regardless of whether they stay up or not. So I think it'll be very interesting to see where Go Ahead go from here in terms of the next trainer. Next manager that they might appoint. Pepe Loanees from Liverpool, who is well been mentioned. But you also have to remember that this is a club where it's given a lot of big names the opportunity to manage. Leo Beenhakker, Henk ten Katen, who have gone on to become household names, and it's a club that's definitely got something. It's a club along with Sparta Rotterdam that when they are in the top division, everyone's pleased to have them there. They're not. They may well have been yo-yo in the last couple of years, but Go Ahead are very much an Eredivisie club, and they've just had a few difficult years in terms of finding stability. But I think it's perhaps a little bit of an underwhelming appointment from their part. I'm just interested to see what direction they would take in the future. But I suppose that may well decide on whether they stay up or not.
There's going to be a lot of English club Loanees in this match. What do you think about the prospects of players such as Dan Crowley, Elvis Manu, Chirivella, and you've got the 3 Man City Loanees, of course, Chelina, Unal, Yeboah. I mean, it's a bit of a broad question. Attack it however you like, but can you see any of these players having big impacts at their clubs, or perhaps in the Premier League? Can you see them getting very good careers there? Do you think they've got the quality for it?
I would. Oh, sorry, Jack. After you.
I think Unal, who's the biggest prospect, especially with the Manchester City striker situation, and Pep Guardiola there managing, and you've got to ask yourself, there's only a few sort of world-class strikers out there, and I think Guardiola would prefer to develop Unal, who's got a lot of talent, and I think he's got the sort of biggest chance, and he's sort of closer to making the first team where he is. Chirivella, he's going into Liverpool side that have a lot of midfielders of his ilk. He was very highly rated when he went there, when he went to Liverpool. And I think it would take longer for him. Crowley, he came to Arsenal, apparently from Aston Villa, also another highly rated talent. And he was loaned out at the beginning of this season, and the manager where he was on loan sort of sent him back to Arsenal because they said there was a problem with his attitude, which I haven't seen at Go Ahead. He's been a live wire there. He's made a few mistakes, of course, but he's very young. He's brought some creativity though. He's got some good assists, and he's really willing to do work with the ball there. But Arsenal also have a big midfield. They're planning on buying other midfielders this year, and I think another loan is in store for him. And I think at 19 years old, he's got another loan in him. And with regards to Salina and Yeboah, in the Eredivisie, we've seen a lot of sort of Loanees like them. You had I think at Groningen, I can't quite remember his name.
Are you thinking of Miroslav Stock from Chelsea? because he was at Twente once. Very similar with me to Chelina, in my opinion.
I think he won the KMVB Cup with Groningen just a few seasons ago.
Rusnak.
Yeah, Rusnak, who came in and he was at Cambo and he did very well there and he moved on to Groningen, but he couldn't really replicate the form is in, and now he's moved to the MLS, I believe. So I think I don't see them making the Manchester City team rather, because Manchester City have invested a lot of money in sort of Sane, Sterling, Gabriel Jesus, players of the ilk, and I see them sort of being sold off for spare parts.
I think with Elvis Manu and Chilivella and Daniel Crowley, I think their future levels may well be Championship. Daniel Crowley is a great prospect, but as in recent years with Arsenal, going back maybe to the last 10-15, we've always had a decent youth team, and there were prospects who were due to come through. Think of Stephen Sidwell, J. Emmanuel Thomas, Ben Chorley, a defender, John Spicer many years ago, and these players always appear on the fringe, but they never appear to have a regular run in the first team. I think that's down to the club's policy. In particular, I think it's down to the manager, who I remember Arsene Wenger once said as regards to young players and players that are on the fringes of the squad, but at some point when you don't play them, you have to sell them. And I think with Crowley, I agree with Chaka, another loan may well be in store. But I think the three players in question, I wouldn't be surprised if they were, if their levels in the future were Championship.
I think Manu, I think his level is Eredivisie, because even at Brighton and Hove Albion, he didn't really get into the team, and it was sort of befuddling because they had signed a lot of good players the time they signed him, and he was expected to be a good player, but especially after his last season at Feyenoord, where Fred Rutten gave him a lot of opportunities, and he did quite well there, and he was part of the team that beat Sevilla in the Europa League. The team that he came on against Roma, and he scored in the Europa League knockout phase. He scored the goal that kept them in European football in pre-season, and he sort of was really a talented player for Eredivisie level. But I don't think Championship level. I think it's just a step too high for him right now, because he's at spells that he was loaned out from Brighton to a Championship club, and he failed to break through there. He failed to break through at Brighton. They didn't quite rate him very highly. They sort of thought of him as an anomaly with all the good signings they made in the last 2 years, that he was sort of the only one that hasn't really performed as expected. But when he's come into the Eredivisie, he's very strong, very quick. He really troubles his fullback, and he's also done this against sort of PSV and the bigger teams and AZ, and he's really troubled them and been a thorn in their side. And so I think Eredivisie is his level as a winger.
I see what you're saying, Chaka, about Manu. I think we need to be careful with the wording of its level, because I still think the Eredivisie is a very challenging league. But the difference compared to the Championship, of course, is the physicality. In the Eredivisie, he will come across as a strong and pacey player, and that will suit him in Eredivisie because he can offer something different. Whereas, in the Championship, it's relied on to be that kind of player. But you've seen it as well with a couple of other players. Paul Claudin, who went from Heracles to Wolves, has had 2 appearances all season. He's been left out of the squad entirely. New managers have come and gone and still not thought he was up to the Championship level. Paul Lambert even said himself the old Wolves manager, current Wolves manager, sorry, that he just wasn't up to the level of the Championship, and that his fitness to play 2 times a week wasn't good enough. Which is probably a bit harsh to say, but maybe that some players from the Eredivisie don't quite make it in the Championship just because of the physicality side, and not because they're not a talented footballer.
Oh no, I didn't mean it that way. I meant it in his level right now, and he has to develop a lot of sort of other things, especially shooting with his weaker foot, how he sort of moves when challenging a fullback to sort of get assists and goals, because you've seen him driving past fullbacks, but he doesn't have he doesn't put in the proper final ball, the proper shot, and he really needs to get some assists and goals for his position. He's still quite young, and his last season at Feyenoord proved that there's a talented player in there. And I think the player Wolves, I think he was Heracles' second choice striker.
Yeah.
To Weghorst, and it was on. I think everyone was sort of confused by that move on the mark of him, because he did score the important goal that won them the Europa League playoff, but he was still on the essence of it, that second choice striker. And I think it was also a matter of a club that hadn't done the scouting properly, and a club that's gone through many managers. So the manager, or maybe the technical director that brought him in, hasn't remained there, and sort of he's had to, and it's also been a struggle for the player and to evolve under different managers in the same season and adjust to a new league. So in that respect, I think also you might see him coming back to the Eredivisie and doing well, because there's a lot of clubs that would take him, and it's also another chance for him to sort of further develop his talents.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's only really enjoyed his career at Sparta Rotterdam when they're in the Jupiler League, the second tier, and he came to Heracles, and I think he only scored 4 goals last season. He scored a couple at the start of this before he moved, and the Wolves suddenly would pay £1 million for him. It's a very strange decision. I think you've seen that a couple of times as well with players like Veldwijk coming from the second tier. And I can't pronounce his name. Parashek from Jakarta. They've come back and done well at their respective clubs in the Eredivisie and Eredivisie. But yeah, the experience in England perhaps wasn't what they expected. You were saying, James?
Well, just to elaborate on what you said about Lars Veldwijk, Nottingham Forest, I think to turn it on its head a little bit, I think Michael Kieftenbeld at Birmingham City is doing quite well.
Yeah.
And I know Birmingham City are struggling at the moment, but as far as I'm aware, he's made the step in a reasonable manner where he seems to be coping quite well. So there are some players that appear to be able to cope with it, but I think again with scouting and the Championship as well, maybe I think a lot of Championship clubs are hell bent on either staying in it or getting out of it. Whereas the long term notion of to work towards something. I mean, that's why I'm delighted for Brighton and Hove Albion, because they've worked and they've looked to go forward year on year, and now they look as if they're finally going to enter the Premier League next season. And I think from a Championship club, I think hats off to Brighton in that respect. They've settled on an ambition. They've worked towards it. They've not expected it to happen overnight, and I think that's quite refreshing, really.
I think also a lot of clubs in the Championship, when buying Eredivisie players, they're always looking for a cheap deal. And when you want a player to come in and perform, they're not going to perform on the cheap. And the players that are moving to the Championship clubs aren't moving to clubs where there's a proper management structure there. And we saw Danny Holler, he moved to Brighton and Hove Albion for free. And I think it was a time under Sami Hyypiä where they didn't really have money, and they were looking for deals like that. And when they finally got money, he was out of the team, and they bought players of a different level. And now he's back at PEC, but they've decided against renewing his contract. Charon Cherry was another one. He had got called up to the Dutch national team before moving to QPR, and Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank really knew him well, and he was a very talented player. His last season at Groningen was spectacular, but I think they didn't use him properly, and under a new manager, he's moved away, and they didn't have the proper management structure in place, and the squad that he was with was in flux, and it's hard for sort of players to adapt to that. And I think his move to QPR was lauded because he could have gone to sort of the UAE to sort of make money, but he chose to sort of go to QPR where he could sort of grind it out and hope to make the Premier League. But the club structure didn't allow him to sort of pursue that dream.
Yeah, added to what you're saying about Chetty, he did eventually swallow the pill when he did go to China in January.
Yeah.
Understandably. But yeah, the poor management is a very good point, and I'd like to add that as well. Thomas Lum, who at Nottingham Forest, came from PEC Zwolle. In my opinion, a very good player. Better as a defensive midfielder than as a centre back. But at Forest, he was played at centre back quite a lot. And yeah, the change of players all the time, management, nothing was consistent for him. He hasn't performed badly, but at the same time, he hasn't had a consistent run in the Forest first team. And he's still holding his form well for the Finnish national team. So yeah, I think maybe another move for a player like Lum might be good for his career. But, you know, these players that are coming over aren't bad players, but maybe sometimes they suffer from bad management and stuff like that and inconsistencies. I think Kieftenbelt, for example, when Gary Rowett was at Birmingham, he performed excellently in a fantastic team. Not going so well now because he was mistakenly sacked. But yeah, no, he's been one of the best players, Kieftenbelt. Just a little note on that. One of the best players at Birmingham.
From looking from afar, I think Kieftenbelt has adapted very well. As regards to Charon Cherry, he was linked with Galatasaray before leaving for Queen's Park Rangers, and there were initial media reports with from Groningen to Galatasaray. Is that a good fit? Would that be a bridge too far? But I think I don't know how concrete the interest was from Galatasaray, but I think hindsight is a wonderful thing. But he could have very well been advised to choose Galatasaray over Queen's Park Rangers in that respect.
I'll just make a final point on the 3 Man City loanees. I think, as already been mentioned, Unal will make it, perhaps in the Premier League, if maybe not with Man City. He has got potential though, because he's still very young. And Man City could definitely use a striker like him if he's able to be patient to wait out his chance, perhaps next season or season after. Although that said, Unal may look for another loan with Twente. It's been rumoured to be the case. Yeboah, he's pacey, very direct, and might look for a championship loan. I think he should anyway. His style of play suits the league, and he would be a good place to develop his goals and assists as well. And yeah, a final point in Chilena, very skillful player. I really like him, but does he do enough contribution? He thinks that he said in an interview that he's ready for the next level. I'm not convinced myself. He hasn't proven to be Twente's best player or anything like that. And his form from the start of the season has tailed off. What do you think on Chilena? Just a final point in these loanees.
I think with Unal, they are delighted with the season he's had. He scored a spectacular goal at home to Willem II. And I spoke to Jeroen van der Leylen, who told me about Unal, and he said that he's an absolute killer in the penalty box. And in terms of even in training, he's just here, there, and everywhere, and real cool, calm, and collected. So I think, and I also think he'd be quite happy to to remain at FC Twente. I mean, he's also gaining notoriety in playing for Turkey, and I think it would be advised to stay at FC Twente. And I think he's had a very good season at Unal, and he's done ever so well.
I think before he joined FC Twente had a very talented young striker, Jari Oosterwijk, who I rated quite highly, and I would like to see him. He was loaned out at the beginning of the season. I would like to sort of see him progress as a young Dutch striker, and I think the Twente have made no secret of the fact that they would like to keep him going into next season. But I think within regards how well he's done and how young he is, I think there could be a lot of other teams look at him. I think it could be one of those situations where Man City take him for the preseason, and they only decide to loan him out only probably in the sort of late August, like what happened with Karim Rakik, what they did with Karim Rakik a few seasons ago when he was at PSV, because in his first season they said when he went back to Man City, they were so shocked at how much he had bulked up in the season that Pellegrini really wanted to have a look at him. So I think Guardiola is really going to have a long look at Unal, especially with the confidence that you go back to Man City with. And I think if he didn't return to Twente, I think they could use the loan market well to sort of look for support for Oosterwijk, who's a player from the academy and who could really shine at Eredivisie level, and is a very talented young striker.
Shall we switch our attentions to the relative elephant in the room about the Eredivisie? Ajax Feyenoord. Huge title match. 6 points between them right now before kickoff. Who's going to win?
Well, obviously it's the biggest game in the Netherlands, and it's one that gains a lot of international attention. With the head-to-head, Ajax are currently in front of Feyenoord, but one vital piece of information people mustn't forget is that Feyenoord haven't won the Klaassieker since January 2012, which is almost more than 5 years ago. And I think Ajax will win. Not just saying that in the hope that the title race may even get a little bit more closer. Feyenoord, if memory serves me correctly, they haven't won in Amsterdam since I think 2005, and that's 12 years ago. And obviously when they play at home against Ajax, the chances are much more enhanced. But I think with Ajax knowing that if they are going to harbour ambitions to put real pressure on, then they have to win. I think they will win. I'm going for a 2-0 win for Ajax on Sunday.
Yeah, I think Ajax will win too. They're such a different beast at home. They've won 10 of their last 11 games at home. The only team that's beat them at home is Willem Toy at the beginning of this season. I think also the fact that Ziyech, Younes, those two players who have got a rest, they haven't got an international duty. And those are two of the players that have played the most this season. I think it's going to be an interesting team, especially it's going to be an interesting game, especially the battles on the wings. I would like to see sort of something that the other teams in the Eredivisie haven't done. Is I think Nelom's a very defensively weak fullback, and teams don't really challenge him. And when teams, I think in the last game, Heerenveen put Slagvia against Nelom and really targeted him in the first half, and it worked. And they really used his defensive weaknesses to really get an upper hand in that game. And I think last season, AZ targeted him too, and they targeted him when AZ were at home, and they beat Feyenoord comfortably with Janssen scoring a hat-trick. They targeted him to great effect, and not enough teams do that. And I think when Congolo's not fit, I think they should go for Lucas Woudenberg at left back, because he's defensively stronger, better in the air, more balanced, and I think they should go for him at left back. And Younes and Kazdorp on the other wing is another intense battle, and Ziyech against El Amadi, and Klaassen against Vilhena. Those are really intense battles in midfield, and you just hope that I expect Ajax to really pin Twente back as they do against most teams. They're much better at sort of compressing play, sort of winning the ball up high and sort of starting the next wave of attack. Verkeva and Sanchez have really come along very well as a partnership. They've got Veltman and Sinkgraven fit, so they can play their first choice back four. Onana's come along really well as a keeper this season. He got a lot of clean sheets in his first season. Very good ball-playing keeper. He made that mistake against Groningen, but he's come back from it. He's still only 20 years old, and there's rumors in Spain that Villarreal are looking at him as a replacement for Sergio Asenjo. And I think sort of the biggest fear you have for Ajax is basically their wastefulness, the ability to miss a lot of chances. That is going to bite them soon, because they've been wasteful many times this season, but their quality has seen them through. But in big games like against Feyenoord and against Schalke in the few weeks, it's not, they need to be more clinical, especially on the wide players like Bertrand Traore and Amin Younes, who have been very frustrating for fans this season. But I still expect them to win this. A few of the players have gotten good rest. They have Dolberg back, and Dolberg is an essential piece of their puzzle, because you saw against Excelsior they didn't really threaten without Dolberg, with Traore and Cassier in the second half up front. And I think the more Dolberg is a key cog, not in the attack, but how they approach defenses and how they sort of try to break down teams. But I expect Ajax to win 2-1.
I agree with your points, Jack, about the rest. I think the rest will serve Ajax better than it will Feyenoord, because Ajax played a lot of games. I also agree with you about the fullbacks point, with it being tough. Tougher Feyenoord, for Ajax down that right-hand side. And I also agree that Ajax will win. So I hope this doesn't become a boring discussion. But I think a point about the fullbacks is on the other side, you've got, I would put, if I was Van Bronckhorst, I'd put Count on the right-hand side to target Sinkgraven, because for pace, I'm sure he can manage the likes of Bassisoglu, Berghuis. But can he handle Cout's physicality and aerial duels, for example? I think that's an interesting battle as well.
And that's quite clever, Michael, because if you put Coit there, then that allows Vilhena more freedom, and you suddenly got a situation where you're forcing Younes to come back, or you've got a 2-on-1 situation. Vilhena's so much better when he's got more freedom to roam forward, and he's such a tigerish player, and he can also pass the ball and shoot from long range. So I think putting Coit against Sinkgraven will be really good. And I think that's the side that you target as a Feyenoord team, because Veltman on the other end is sort of a a centre back at heart, and he's very defensively sound, and he's been very defensively sound this season. And also, if they go with Kenny Tete, he's also a player that played at centre back at youth level, and he's also another player that's defensively sound. But he's come along very nicely in terms of his attacking play in the periphery under Peter Bosz.
I think one important caveat is that for such a spectacle, it's such a shame that both sets of fans will not be allowed to attend. And many years ago, they made a decision to have Ajax supporters not gaining entrance to the Kuip for the game Feyenoord Ajax, and not to allow Feyenoord supporters for into the arena for the Ajax Feyenoord Klaassieker. I believe the last Klaassieker where both fans were present was August 2005, and that was when I first moved to the Netherlands, and I was at that game. And as a spectacle, I'd never seen anything like it. It was Amsterdam Arena was completely packed to the rafters. The level of ferocious rivalry between the two, even in the warm-up. There were players that couldn't even warm up properly due to the being booed and being cajoled by the opponents and by the rivalry. Feyenoord won that game 2-0, and I remember exiting the stadium, and Dylan was in his first spell at the club, and you would have thought he won the Champions League. It meant so much to the Feyenoord Legion, as they say, and I just think as a spectacle, it's such a shame that they have tried to get both supporters groups from both parties around the table to talk about finding a solution. Both city councils of Rotterdam and Amsterdam are both involved, but as yet they're yet to find a solution, and it's such a shame that the biggest game in the Dutch football calendar cannot be attended by both sets of supporters.
I think the recent Kenneth Vermeer incident, where they had sort of a dummy with a shirt with his name on the back, and they were sort of hanging it at the Amsterdam Arena, the Ajax fans last season. It really didn't help anything, because it was sort of another light shone on the sort of hooliganism of some of the fans and how some of them take it too far. And you've had situations and sort of misunderstandings with Feyenoord fans, especially against Roma in Europe a few seasons ago, that nearly led to them having to play in an empty stadium at the start of this season, where they were sort of accused of racism because of the bananas, but it was a misunderstanding that the UEFA sort of punished them for that, but the fans sort of carry bananas to every game, and it's a very multicultural place. And I think there's been a lot of talk about how the Dutch, the KNVB and the Dutch teams need to sort of discipline their fans. I think the PSV fans in Madrid last season, it was sort of and the stuff they were doing with sort of the homeless people. It was a bad look, and it was a bad taste in the mouth for Dutch football. And there's PSV have come out and said that they are looking at ways to sort of discipline the fans. Martin van Heel, the technical director of Feyenoord at the beginning of this season, said that he's looking at ways to sort of discipline the fans, and sort of because the Eredivisie has sort of this image issue when they go out to Europe with the fans, with the anti-Semitic chanting and things like that. When I think most of them, it's most of the fans are good. You saw the Ado, and I think Ado versus Feyenoord last season, where they're throwing children's toys to the Feyenoord fans, and that image, those sort of images went viral. But I think I think because of that, it's going to be sort of a while before we finally get both fans back into the stadium. But when the Klaassieker sort of happens at each stadium, the fans of that particular club where the match is being played, they sort of do a good job at filling the stadium and sort of setting up an atmosphere, and the players also sort of do a good job at really getting stuck into the game and really getting emotionally emotional in the game, and really putting on such a tempo that's quite a high tempo for Dutch football, and I think it's going to be a very enjoyable game on Sunday lunchtime.
Just to give an example of the rivalry, Ajax Amsterdam is sponsored by an internet provider called Ziggo. Ziggo are an internet provider here in the Netherlands. When the customers, Ziggo customers of, because it was a fusion between two separate internet providers, the people that already had an internet subscription in Rotterdam, when they learned that Ziggo would become the head sponsor of Ajax on their shirts, they relinquished their subscription and deliberately went to look for another internet provider. It's one of the many reasons why the rivalry runs extremely deep, even in terms of the rivalry between the two cities, where Amsterdam is frowned upon from the Rotterdam perspective, and Amsterdam always look a little bit down towards the workers in Rotterdam, as they say. So it runs extremely deep, and I just think from a Dutch football fan point of view, it's such a shame that even all the efforts made from Amsterdam City, from both city councils, Amsterdam and Rotterdam, and potential olive branches held out to try and find a resolution, even including the mayors of both cities, and yet there's been no solution found. And it's 12 years since since both sets of fans were in attendance.
Yeah, I think even Football International, when they had Tony Villena as on the cover, they sort of had to sell another cover with Davy Klaassen in Amsterdam, and they sort of used the Tony Villena one in Rotterdam, because of the rivalry runs so deep that they couldn't sell the Tony Villena one in Amsterdam or the Davy Klaassen one in Rotterdam. So I think, but a rivalry that intense, it's so good for the level of Dutch football, because when they play each other, or when one of them goes and plays PSV, you get such a quality game and such an entertaining game that you may not see in most other games.
Yeah, I agree. The intensity is going to be massive in that match. And I think it's whoever can handle the pressure the most. And Ajax have the majority of the pressure on them, seeing as they've got to make up the ground. The away fans aren't there, so it's all the home fans that are going to be booing them if they're not winning, because there's no excuses and everything seems to be on their side. But it's up to Feyenoord really to come up and turn up and get a result, and I think that's what Van Bronckhorst will target: a result, not necessarily a win. It might make the difference for Ajax as long as they can take the chances that should inevitably come their way because of that. But do you two think that Feyenoord have got it in terms of the long term this season? Do you think they're going to have enough?
I think if they avoid defeating Amsterdam, I think it's highly likely that they'll be celebrating their first title since 1999, and I think the emotion involved in that. I mean, there's young Feyenoord supporters that have never seen their club win the league. I think how they deal, if they do win the league, the interesting thing will be is how they do deal with all the plaudits that come their way. The club itself finally winning the title again after many barren seasons where they've had so many different managers, so many different approaches, so many different player turnover, even financial difficulty at one point. They reached the playoff final at some point to qualify for Europe in one case, and were eliminated. They also failed in qualification rounds of the Champions League. So if they do win the league, I'll be very interested to see how the club copes with it all, because it's going to be a little bit foreign for them, because it's been such a long time. And then it begs the question coming into next season. Okay, this season isn't finished yet, but it begs the question going into next season how the club will cope on two fronts. Will they push on and be in a position to win the title again? Will they struggle on two fronts? Will they retreat back to a club nearly winning the league, being here and there? I just think it's be very interesting to see what happens.
What you said. Go ahead, Chaka. I was about to change the topic slightly.
I think the draws to Excelsior and Groningen are sort of going to kill Ajax in the end, because they could have been closer. This game could have been more pivotal for them, but I think they've got too much ground to cover, and they have to go sort of away to PSV. Well, I think I agree with James, and I think you also need to add the fact that, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst, we have no idea what type of coach he is yet, and he's had this season, and he seems to be sort of a more cheerleader coach and sort of egging his players on, but we have yet to see what actual tactical nous he has. And I think if they sort of lose Nikolai Jorgensen, who's been incredible for them this season, top scorer and top assist in the league, then it will be interesting to see how they would adapt to that. And with PSV, you've seen how one summer can change a title-winning team to sort of a team that's lingering for below the title, in third place. So I think it's really interesting to see how sort of Van Bronckhorst and Van Heel will kick on if they do win the title this season.
I think to elaborate on the polar opposite of that, if Feyenoord do not win the league this season, then I think it's really, really going to hurt the club long term. I think, hypothetically, should they finish second? Should something irregular happen where it's a last day win, like in 2007 where PSV won the league on goal difference? Should Feyenoord not win the league, I think it will really, really hurt them long term with having been so long and becoming so close to being champion and not to be champion. I think it will hurt them. So I think for the good of the club going forward, they must ensure that they do win the league and they take the opportunity that's presented to them this season.
Relating to the Champions League point, I personally think that Nikolai Jorgensen will stay with Feyenoord so long as they're in the Champions League next season, which comes with winning the league. And it relates to this question we had on Twitter about will Dutch clubs make a comeback in the Champions League. I just want to start with my opinion. I think personally Feyenoord do get there. They can keep what they have, strengthen it as well. And I think they could actually become quite a good force in Europe. We've seen it this season, where the home games were so crucial to them. But they weren't totally out of all their away games. Let's forget about the Man United defeat, where they lost 4-0. That was because they had a lack of players that evening. What do you guys think? Do you think that there's a potential future comeback in the next 5 to 10 years for Dutch clubs? It's a common question we normally have in, but perhaps concentrate on the upcoming few years maybe. Do you think there's going to be an improvement?
You can go, James.
Thank you. I think you could make the case that Ajax are proving that point this season by reaching the quarterfinals of the Europa League. If you look back, I think it was back in 2003 when a very young Ronald Koeman reached nearly the semi-finals of the Champions League with Ajax. They was eliminated in the quarterfinals against AC Milan. I don't think that the Dutch teams should be written off as they have been in Europe in previous seasons. And I think it also depends who qualifies. It wasn't so long ago that Utrecht, when they was in a European group with Liverpool, Napoli and Steaua Bucharest, that they made life very difficult for their opponents. And if it wasn't for goal difference, they would have reached the knockout phase. So I think it's be interesting to see who qualifies for which competitions, for groups they're drawn in. And I certainly wouldn't write that success off in terms of progressing further in competitions than what they have done in previous seasons.
I think the Europa League is sort of I've said it on podcasts before, that's sort of the competitions where you could see Dutch teams thriving again. You saw Feyenoord, they were 1-0 up against Zoya. They were dominating. They got a red card, and then Zoya sort of came back. But if they won that game, they would have certainly gone through to the next round of the Europa League. And you've seen PSV sort of been in group. They were in a group with Wolfsburg and United last season, and they came through it. But I think the Dutch teams, the top 3, the top 4, they have more talent for the Europa League rather than the Champions League. And I think the season before, Philip Cocu has reached the semi-final of the Europa League before. And you also have you also have I think you have the teams in sort of Russia and things like that, because PSV Dutch clubs have very poor run in Russia. But I think the Europa League is where you could see the Dutch teams thrive, because you could have a Europa League with Ajax and PSV last season, and you could have them progressing. And the sort of younger group that's coming through, I think you're going to see a lot of the players in the region of 24, 25 leaving, and you're going to have squads in between 20 and 23. And I think that's more, having sort of deep runs in Europe, that's more viable for the Europa League rather than the Champions League. And the Europa League has always thrown up, even though Sevilla won it, they've thrown up a good, they've thrown up some good runners up and some good semi-finalists. And I think it's a very open league, and that's why it's so entertaining. And there's no sort of hierarchy the same way there is in the Champions League. So you would expect more Dutch teams to push on in the Europa League, because that's where the young players can sort of do well, play with more confidence, and that's where you meet more teams that the Dutch teams can play their style against, and can manage, and sort of more teams on the punching threshold. And I see the Europa League as where the Dutch teams will perform better in the coming years.
It still comes back down to the coefficient, and the last 5 years have been some of the weakest that the Netherlands have experienced for quite some time. And this season has been a mini recovery to that, and I think that can only continue next season, when you see the cup winner in the Europa League group stage, so that the bigger teams above that can qualify and reach the stages, because you see weak teams often drop out before the season's even started. I think having the Dutch team again in the Champions League group before that ends will help as well. The ultimate aim for the Netherlands should be to get into the top 10 again, as in the top 10 top leagues in Europe. That will help with the Champions League automatic place again. And I think it will be a nice recovery, actually, in the future. I hope.
I think it will be. It's also due to the fact that Ukraine have teams constantly going into the knockout phase of the Europa League and the Champions League. There were Shakhtar who constantly move into the knockout phases of the Champions League. That Dnipro, who made it to the final a few seasons ago. we've got Dynamo Kiev, who also made a deep run last year, and you also have teams in Switzerland who also sort of try to make deep runs in the Europa League, and you have the Belgian clubs performing better, and you have Portuguese clubs, and I think those sort of it's important to have at least someone that's always a team that's always sort of making it to the knockout phases, because you saw last season, at the beginning of last season, Van der Sar and Frank de Boer said we're looking at getting to the semi-final stage, and they got knocked out at the end of the group. They only had one win that they won in the second last game of the group stage. So I think it should be a gradual process, and it should just start at a team going into sort of a group looking to get out to the knockout phase of the Europa League or the Champions League, and that's how we start to see the coefficient sort of improve with more teams getting through the group stage.
You can't deny that Dutch clubs have had, perhaps it's a biased point of view from me, but they've had a lot of bad luck in terms of draws, matches where they're dominated but lost, and as well as bad refereeing decisions. And that's all congregated to make an awful coefficient position they currently find themselves in, and everyone's panicking because Dutch football's failing. And it has obviously diminished a bit, but I think looking forwards, it's going to get better, and I think you are going to see more teams in the Eredivisie keep their best players for a little longer, because they can make these deep runs into Europe, which is the kind of thing players will look for to stay at the clubs.
I think one interesting point about the coefficient, you must also remember that in recent years, like last season, Heracles Almelo played Arouca from Portugal, and Heracles in European level, through winning the playoff, suffered stage fright, didn't really think that they belonged at that level, and especially in the game against Portugal, they couldn't really bring anything. They couldn't even string a pass together. We also in recent years had Go Ahead gaining entry to Europe due to the Fair Play League when they were last in the Eredivisie, and they were absolutely torn apart by Ferencváros from Hungary. So I think strange draws such as Heracles against Arouca and Go Ahead against Ferencváros, that hasn't helped the coefficient cause. I do agree with the difficult Champions League groups that the teams have found themselves in, and the losses to lower teams, and even in the case of Ajax when they played Steaua Bucharest a few years ago and won the first leg and lost the second leg in Romania and went out on penalties, I believe. These types of situations have also ensured that this is the current position that Dutch European football finds itself in.
Yeah, I agree with James. You also have to have teams doing better in the Champions League qualification phase. It's been, I think, 4 years since a team last got into the Champions League through the qualification phase, and that means that you don't have two teams in the Champions League group stages. So you're relying on that one team, and then that one team gets into a tough group and they get knocked out, and so that really doesn't help the coefficient. But I think you have to also say, I agree with Michael because of the refereeing decisions. You saw at the beginning of this season against Atletico Madrid where PSV have an early goal denied, and it was a stonewall goal for Luke de Jong, and that game could have changed the outcome of that game slightly. But I think the most important part is how long teams hold on to their players, how they recruit, and I think so with Brexit, not that there's a good thing to come out of Brexit, teams could hold on to their players, especially the players in the youth academy, the creme de la creme of the youth academy. They could actually get a chance to come through to the first team, and teams could also hold on to their players longer. So because Britain won't be such a viable option for them anymore. So that means you get more competitive teams and more competitive leagues, and teams could be more competitive in Europe too. So I think I would see Dutch teams doing well in the Europa, but I think in the next 3 years you could see teams doing well in the Champions League again after sort of if the KNVB decide to restructure the league and things like that. Oh, I'd just like to point out one thing. AZ have sort of signed Arne Slot as the assistant coach, and it's interesting because he's one of the two managers in a partnership at Campbell, and Campbell knocked out Ajax of the KNVB Becker, and they took AZ to penalties. And then the reckoning for the playoff places for promotion. And Arne Slot he's very highly rated, only 38 years old, very tactically versatile. He's played 3 at the back this season, mostly for Campbell. When he took over when him and Sipke Holsoff took over from Rob Maas, they won 8 of the 11 games after Campbell had only won 1 away game. The Eredivisie this season, and I think sort of for the future of coaching at AZ, you've seen Arne Slot sign a 3-year deal when the current head coach Van der Brom only has 1 year longer. So I think it could be a sort of succession plan for AZ, and a very interesting one at that.
So yeah, thanks again for tuning in to our podcast, our second one this week. We're back with another podcast next week. Keep an eye out for a special upload tomorrow, Friday. And we will have plenty more for you available on Football-Oranje website. Check that out. We've got plenty more coming on our YouTube channel in the coming months. So please keep an eye out for that. Make sure you subscribe to keep up to date on all this. And yeah, thanks for listening. Leave a like. Please let us know in the comments what you thought of the podcast. Let us know your thoughts on the Eredivisie. And yeah, we'll be back with you soon with lots more.